talk about inequalities and Latinas closing the gap, sometimes we feel very isolated. And the first step to not feel that isolated is to share our experiences. In my case, it came in the way of having to pay in the beginning of my career my own taxes and my employer's taxes as a condition to have my visa, my first work permit. And had I shared this, had I heard people like you share their own experiences, I probably would have known that there were laws protecting me, that I had resources, that I had things that I can do. So I think the first step is to have more transparency, to have less shame in what happens, because way too many times we feel that the Latinas who are getting the short end of the stick are a certain group of Latinas. And this is happening to Latinas who are hardworking, talented, educated. It's happening all across the board. That's why we have to talk about it. And this year, and what I'm going to share to you is not to get you depressed, but to get you energized. Equal pay, as you know, is the day when women catch up with all the extra days that we have to work to make the same money a man made the year prior. So this year, equal pay, which is the one for all women, was March 15th. But then when you break it down, for Asian women, equal pay is today, May 3rd. For Black women, is September 21st. For Native American, it's going to be on November 30th. And last, for Latinas, it's going to be this year on December 8th. So if there's one single female demographic that needs to be having this conversation, is Latinas. So welcome to Bridging the Gap. Bienvenidas. So tell me just very briefly, 30 seconds, no more than a minute, a little bit about your background.
So I am an attorney in technology. I am the managing partner of the Dallas office of Jones Day International firm. In my first career, I studied electrical engineering and then worked as an engineer in the telecom space. So both engineering and law, both in very male-dominated areas.
Perfect.
My name is Sandra Maria Garcia Rubio, and I am the state president for the Hispanic Women's Network of Texas. That's my side hustle, my real job. I'm a budget analyst for the city of Fort Worth.
Betty?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's afternoon. Betty Mineta, President and CEO of Argent Associates. I had a nice career, 20-some-odd years with AT&T. And in 98, I started my own company, Argent Associates, engineering, and a lot of technology background. So welcome, everyone.
Good afternoon. I'm Amanda Arizola. I am a 20-year nonprofit professional. Started out in the law field and decided, oh, I don't know about this. And I started working for attorneys, and I was like, no. Sorry. But I also, I'm freelancing right now as a financial coach, and so a wage gap is really on top of mind for everyone.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So first question has to do with the challenges we face systemically. So what is corporate America's role in addressing the issues faced by women, particularly Latinas? Hilda, would you go first?
So there's so many things corporate American can do, and some of the earlier panels talked about it. But one is understanding the importance of giving the same opportunities to your Latinas that you do to everyone else, and then evaluating them in the same way that you do everyone else. I don't know how many times I am now in a position of power, thankfully, but the number of times that we have evaluated someone and said, oh, well, she hasn't done that, so she's not doing well. And it's usually a Latina. And we will have her counterpart, who is a white male, and they'll say, oh, but he hasn't done it, but I'm sure we'll get him an opportunity, and therefore he's wonderful, right? It irritates me, and that's one thing corporate America can do, is not only give women, Latinas, Latinos, the opportunities, but evaluate them in the same way that you evaluate all of the other peers.
the old story of women being promoted on proof and men being promoted on potential. Perfect. Who wants to go next?
I was going to say, as a budget analyst at the city of Fort Worth, I get to see everybody's salary, and I get to see, obviously, the men up here, the women down here. And recently, I had the conversation with my supervisor because she hadn't delivered on a promise when I came back to the city. I said, have you ever even looked at my resume? Because you hired me, but did you look at my resume? When she was promoting another person, I said, I've managed over $600 million in revenue. I set up my own model for sales tax revenue. Because she called me into the office one day and she said, look at what I developed. I said, well, I did that too. I said, you really need to look at my resume because I'm looking elsewhere. Yes, I have 2 years to retire, but I'm not afraid. But I think in my area is probably my age, because I've seen everybody that's getting hired is coming from the outside in their 30s. So that's the battle I'm fighting in government. And obviously, we don't make a lot of money in government because it's based on sales tax and sales tax revenue and property taxes. So if it goes down, and also our priorities particularly in the city of Fort Worth is police and fire. It's not the people that actually make the money for them.
So the question is, what are corporate's responsibility? I think they have a definite responsibility because, first of all, if we do nothing with the pay gap, it will take 176 years to reach parity. 176 years. That's unacceptable. Unacceptable. And so I think that corporations understand where their money's coming from. They know we are the consumers. We are the fastest and largest growing community, the Hispanic community. So they have an obligation to make sure that they do something about it and act intentionally. And again, I think earlier conversations, we've heard some of the things they could do. You could start ERG groups, you could do all this, but we don't have time. I think time is now, and we need to hold them to the fire, and we need to be very vocal and very intentional about what we need to do to close those pay gaps and to make sure that our community is seen as important as all the other ones, and we'll go into a little bit further later on.
There's been some heated conversations, even in the backstage.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that, as Betty touched on with the DI groups, the ERG groups, and things like that, is one of the things with my experience in corporate America was also mentorship by other women leaders at that time. Fortunately and unfortunately, the experience that I had led me to the nonprofit world rather than to corporate. When I was working for a very large insurance law firm in downtown Dallas, I had a mentor in New York that was leading me to CMO route. However, my mentor here, my direct supervisor in Dallas, decided that right after the bubble burst, we know everything that happened with the first bubble burst, she lost a lot of retirement funding, and she was on her way to retirement, and I was going to be moving into that trajectory. Well, after that happened, my New York director decided to say, hey, you need to look at Amanda and to help mentor her along the way. And she looked at me directly and said, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm still here. I'm going to be here for a while, and you can figure out everything else on your own. So when we talk about mentorship and we talk about women, we have to look at what are the available opportunities in corporate America to provide those additional safeguards and things like that. Now, fortunately, that led me to leave to nonprofit work, which was where I've lived and thrived, but those experiences are definitely shaping the way that Latinas create wealth and money.
Yes, and stories like what you mentioned, Amanda, unfortunately, we hear it all the time across different industries. I've heard from people in creative industries that are in the writer's room, which are mostly male-dominated, and there's one woman or one Latina, and then when another woman comes in the writer's room, it's like this implicit feeling that there's space only for one woman or for one Latina in a certain space. And we have to move beyond that mentality that if one Latina is making it or one woman is making it, there's space only for that one. So moving on to the next topic, I want to know which are the tools or the resources that would support, in your opinion, the advancement of Latinas. Hilda?
So I'm going to talk now, as I'm the board chair of the Texas Women's Foundation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about tools and resources that are available there. So we do a lot of research, and you can go onto our website, and there's incredible research that covers Latinas, women of color, throughout Texas, and it tells you what the needs are. So those are resources. What are the needs? Education, healthcare, childcare for women in Texas and across the country. But that's a resource. There's a lot of grants that we also award to nonprofits that are advancing women either economically or leadership. There's programs that you could put your women, your Latinas in. The Executive Leadership Council is one such program, Young Women's Initiative, teaching leadership skills so that they can advance in their careers. And then also doing at the young women, 12 to 24-year-olds, and helping them develop their leadership skills. Because as some of the earlier panels talked about, leadership skills are critical to succeeding in corporate America. So there are nonprofits that focus on women, and that's one resource. Texas Women's Foundation is one of them, but I just wanted to approach that from a different perspective than just corporate America.
In my area, as president of the Hispanic Women's Network, we have a Latinas in Progress program where we have a college prep. So this young ladies, one of my goals when I joined the organization was to make sure the next generation goes to college. So each of our 8 chapters now, we're hopefully 10 by the end of the year. They mentor these ladies, so I'm taking up everybody's offer on mentors. We need mentors for these ladies. We also need sponsors, because some of these ladies, we're trying to make sure they go to college. As a first generation, I'm an immigrant. I came here from Durango, Mexico. I want to make sure that people that look like me go to college, because when my first year at TCU, I left because I didn't see, there was like 20 of us in our little organization of OLAS. That we have changed that dynamic, and I want to make sure that the next generation has an opportunity like myself, to make it out there. And so we need mentors not only for the students, we also need mentors for the ladies, for our members. We have many of the 8 chapters. You can join any one of them. We have professional development. We have networking. We have education. And that, as I was told when I first came across the International Bridge at 7 years old, education is a key to succeed. So please get involved. The Hispanic Women's Network, and we have a state conference coming up too. Thank you.
So some of the, I'll take yours.
You can keep your microphone. You got to keep it.
So some of the resources, I think that, and I think Kim and Belinda maybe alluded to this, but I think we need to be in a position where we have ownership, management, and leadership, right? Human resources is a great part of an organization where you can see yourself and help others achieve their goals, right? Help to lift up other women, not just taking up a seat. So I think that being very specific about the kind of positions, if you're in a corporate environment, obviously look for leadership positions, do jobs that give you visibility so that they can see you. And then you have to really lift other women. I think we talked about that, how if there's 2 women in a room, and I could tell you some real cat stories from corporate America, but I think that it's important to kind of look at where your career and have a plan. Put a timeline and a roadmap of where you want to go in 3 to 4 years. And I think, again, someone from a previous one alluded to that. I think other organizations that are out there that can help women to achieve. the Hispanic Chamber, for example, your local chambers, and I see Irving Hispanic Chamber here. So, because these are women that can help you in your career or in business, right? I'm also part of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I see a lot of stuff that we do at the national level. Then there's organizations like High Tech for those of us in Hispanic and technology. So there are so many organizations, so many resources that you can turn to. But you go to your local chamber and start there if that's something that can help you.
Yeah, I would say the positive side of my story earlier was that I was able to get a lot of help from individuals because I was a member of Hispanic Women's Network of Texas, and many of the ladies are in this particular room. I literally started when I was a baby in college, and so, but also the women in college at my sorority, Kappa Delta Chi, as well as Las Comadres para las Americas, and now Leadership Women have been able to support all of those conversations. The one thing that we need to help our individuals and our Latinas really realize is that there is help and support, and we need to openly talk about these things. We need to talk about our money. We need to talk about the issues that are happening in all particular jobs, because I did leave corporate America, but I'm going to say I knew who the sharks were there in nonprofit work. I don't always know who the sharks are. And so you have to really figure out what do those things mean and create your own support network. And so that support network is able to really help dive deep and create those conversations that we don't necessarily always have or have the support for.
And something that we mentioned also leading to this panel was the conflicting messages we receive as women in general and as Latinas in particular in terms of success. Because on one hand, you grow up listening that if you put your mind to something, you can achieve whatever you want, and you're powerful, and you can be the best, and you can achieve everything you want. And at the same time, we get penalized in so many ways by being perceived as inadequate parents, selfish, materialistic, or many other labels if we achieve that same success that we were told we should have. So the idea here is to have a conversation, and if you want to share a little bit of that thing, for a man, it's always being applauded by being successful because he is successful. For a woman, it gets more complicated, and sometimes many women who are successful deal with the guilt of feeling they are either betraying their roots if their family comes from a more humble beginning, like ¿quién se cree que es ella? Ahora le fue bien, or maybe that they are inadequate parents. So, Hilda, you had an example of that, right?
I do. So I grew up, was very blessed to have two parents who said, you can do anything you want in this world, right? So just go do it. Don't let others define you. And had all of that. And we have, my husband and I have one child. He's 29, but at the time he was 6. And I was an attorney, big firm, working all the time. My husband was an engineer. And we decided things were out of control. And so he was going to stay home. He is also Latino. So he was going to stay home, and I was going to keep working. And it was marvelous for our family. But my parents, who had always said, you can do whatever you want, were like, what are you doing? Like, your husband is staying home? And they thought that was the worst thing in the world. And his parents, of course, felt the same way. And we had to decide that it was what was important to us as a family and what worked for us that was critical. But it was one of those conflicting messages. And then interestingly enough, my son, who's now 29, but when he was growing up, would say to me, why aren't you like all the other mothers, right? And because I didn't do a lot of stuff that the moms that were at home.
Meaning what? What were you?
Making homemade cupcakes, right? And if you knew how I cooked, you wouldn't want me to make homemade cupcakes. But it was those types of things. The great thing about it is you set an example, and when he started his first job, he'd been working 6 months. We got together for dinner in Austin, and he said, Mom, I know I haven't been working very long, but I get it, and I am so proud of you, right? So as you're going through those things, sometimes you're like, but just power through. So those conflicting messages, things always work out if you stay at it and you rely on your support and you ask for help.
Absolutely. Anyone wants to share conflicting
I was going
messages?
to say that, well, my mom has no clue that I'm here, or doesn't even have a clue what I do. I know people call her all the time, my family from Facebook. They're like, ya sabes, tu hija está en la televisión. Yeah, because I'm also an immigration activist and do a lot of stuff in my community. So my tias from Mexico or my tias from California, they're always calling her, ¿No has visto tu hija? Pues no la he visto hoy. So, yeah, and, my brother, he's a trucking company owner in Alvarado. I do his financials. But he does none of them because they don't understand. Be involved because I'm supposed to be married. La Mexicana is supposed to be, I was taught very early, a trapear, cooking, everything you can think, iron, sewing, everything you can think of to be the perfect Mexican wife. Of course, I'm not even married. I have no kids, but although I have 50 billion, like typical Mexican family, I have 50 billion nieces and nephews. And I'm the oldest, and I've always felt like I have to set the bar for everybody. So I was the first to graduate from even elementary, because my parents didn't go to school in Mexico. Elementary, middle, high school, college, and masters, and all that stuff. But I wanted to set the bar, so that's the bar I always set for our students through our lip class every year. So we work really hard for them so they can see. Because I still remember when we were interviewing for a TCU scholar, full ride for TCU, one of the students said that she had never seen so many professional Latina women. And that was sad to me. That was super sad that she had never seen that many. And she said, thank you for taking time out, to teach us about going to college. So that's one of the reasons, I do what I do.
Thank you. Betty, Amanda?
Well, my story is very similar to Hilda, working in corporate America and traveling internationally and then having your own business. I was never at my kid's soccer game or my daughter's basketball game or cheerleading, and my mom lived with us, so she took care of them while I did my thing. So a couple times when I did show up, it was like, oh, so your husband does have a wife and your kids do have a mother. But they would never say that to, I'm sure, my husband if he was never there and I was always the one, But that's typical, I guess. I don't know.
You didn't care that much, right?
Huh?
You didn't care that much, right?
Nah.
No, I can tell.
Yeah, no, I think that it's important to also insert yourself to teach your family how to treat you also, because those norms and traditions are what they are, norms and traditions. They can be broken, they can be moved away. I grew up in a single parent household, loved my mother, but she never did any of that. She was a nurse before, and that's okay. I learned how to do it myself. I learned how to sometimes forge my own documents. That's okay. We do what we need to do to be able to go on that museum trip, because I'm the nerd. But I think that's the one thing that we do, and especially in kind of bringing the conversation back towards kind of wage gap, is teaching our families also how to talk to us about money, how to talk to us about our time. Why are you spending? Why are you at the library so long? Why are you going on this trip? Why are you doing that? Why aren't you staying at home doing the laundry? Well, you know what? There are things that are other things that we can do that need to be done, and that's what I'm doing at this point. They're still going to love you. As I tell my mentors, especially my mentees, when they're going and thinking about leaving for college away from home, there's so much conflict with that, but the rewards are great on the other side as well. And your parents are always going to love you. They're always going to be there for you. It may be something that they're sad about at this moment, but sometimes we've got to take those risks and take those moments and know that they'll always be there to catch you when and if something happens. But think about how you'll soar. And so I think that's the part that we also have to take in of ourselves, is teaching our families that. Not only our parents, but our tias, tios, our cousins, everybody, because we're always going to have some kind of encounter, especially as you move forward in corporate America.
Perfect. Yes, approval sometimes takes a little longer. So now I want to move to actionable things that we can share. So what are the best practices that you have seen to address issues faced by Latinas? It could be a personal experience. It could be something you've seen in a company. It could be something you read, you experimented with. So, Hilda?
So when I was studying engineering, one of my professors walked in, and this was back in the 80s, so there weren't many women in engineering. And a professor walked in, he looked around the classroom. I was the only woman. He looked right at me and said to the classroom, well, we know who's going to fail this class, right? And it's how you take those things. And so I would say, just, again, don't let others define you, right? And never quit. It doesn't make it easy, but it should. You should not ever let anyone stand in your way of doing what you want to do. Then when I joined the law firm that I now am at, and a firm that's been very good to me, but when I started, again, senior partner walked in, and I do patent litigation, which is technology-driven. Senior partner walked in, and there was all men and myself, and he said, well, I didn't think we were going to have any legal assistants, which are the paralegals who help the lawyers, at this meeting, as he looked at me, right? Again, what do, right? After years of going to school, you don't just say, well, I'm done, and just power through. So I would say from a practical, tips for folks is individually, you cannot let others define you, and you've got to have a thick skin. As corporate America, you have got to be in tune with those types of comments and step in and say something, and be aware of those types of biases that come in, subtle or not, as the professor wasn't quite as subtle, maybe the senior partner was a little more subtle, but be aware of that and call that out. When people do those types of things, you can call them out in a thoughtful way without stepping on too many toes. But you could have said, if I had been a partner at the time, I would have said, "Oh yeah, Mark is not a paralegal. He's actually a lawyer." A funny way to call it out, but you've made the point that the woman is not the paralegal. So that's just one story to share.
And I know at the City of Fort Worth, we noticed a lot of us Latinos weren't getting promoted, so we got a little group together and we formed the Hispanic Leadership Organization. I can't remember when. It's been so long because I've been at the City of Fort Worth practically since birth. That's why I tell people I started in high school. So when we saw people we weren't getting promoted, we formed this organization, HLO, and we started to make sure we trained the employees, we mentored them and let them know that, hey, it's look to the job description, what does it require, and get that what it requires. And I had the experience, I just didn't have the degree, so I knew that's what I needed. So I said, well, nobody's going to turn me down now if I get that piece of paper. So that's what we mentored the employees to make sure to promote, because otherwise they'll settle to be a secretary. I said, why were you going to be a secretary when you can be the manager? So that's when we saw a deficiency, that's how I approached it.
So with me, I just think that since we're running a little bit out of time, use your voice, as Kim said. I think we need to be intentional. We need to be vocal. We can't be shy and call out things, as Hilda said. There's a professional way, because we need to also take the playbook from other ethnic women-owned or women businesses and workers, right? And we were talking about that, during Black Heritage Month, going to Target, I see all these Black women, Black businesses, everything was so out there, and it's okay, but then we need to do the same, and it's not dividing us, but it's making sure that we are not left behind, as you rightfully pointed out, that we're all the way on the bottom. And so unless we start being intentional and being vocal and being visible, we're not going to change. And so we don't have that luxury, we don't have that time for our kids and the next generation of Latinas and Latinos. So I say let's work together to make sure that our voices are heard. Maybe we should get shirts, Latinas, Latina Power, I don't know. But I'm saying I think we need to do something.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to shout this from the rooftops because our Black and Brown coalitions need to be stronger as we're looking, and especially as brands are looking at what ethnic groups to be able to give money or to support in other kind of entrepreneurship. One of the reasons that I sit as an appointee to Tarrant County Hospital District JPS Network, and I serve as the first Latina of this board that's been around for decades, almost generation, that serves more than 60% Latinos, is because it was recognized by another woman of color that there was a gap missing on that board. There are only 2 women on an 11-member board of a county hospital that's a $1.2 billion hospital. Again, serving more than 60% Latinos. So representation really matters. And so when we say representation matters, we have to carry that forth also as Latinas. We have to be able to bring people to the table, gather them around, and do something with it. So when we talk about action steps, what are those additional action steps are? So I try to, in my particular roles, I try to make sure, A, we're getting an executive management team that does represent community, and also B, making sure that we create opportunities for information that the community hasn't been receiving before. So we have to bring everybody up because all boats rise the same, and if they're going to move one forward, we have to move all together.
Perfect. So before we finish, I want to take this panel to full circle. When we first started this conversation, this panel, we said that we're sharing our stories and we're sharing our experiences because we want to feel less lonely, less isolated when we had experiences in which we had the short end of the stick, and sometimes we feel we are inadequate or that this is happening only to certain Latinas. So I want to finish by sharing some of the advices, the best advices that you might have received or that you might have given. To me, something I always think about is that we don't have to jump to permanent conclusions based on temporary circumstances. Too many times we're facing challenges, we're facing circumstances that are very hard, and we get too close to abandon our dreams prematurely because of those circumstances. So for that, Gabi that was starting her journey, or for whoever that is starting and is facing these gaps and these different challenges, don't abandon your dream. Don't jump to permanent conclusions based on temporary circumstances. Who want to share a little bit of some advice?
So advice I would have given to myself when I was young, and I didn't realize it until later in life, is the importance of relationships. And the fact that you all are here, you recognize that. I thought it was just work hard, and that's all you had to do. But relationships matter, so take time to nurture them and connect with people. I think that is critical to your success. I think we all need to be connected to one another. I'm very involved in the Dallas community, and I don't know the number of times I am told, well, there aren't any Latinos that could be on this board, or there aren't any. And we've got to raise our hand and say, here I am, and connect with one another and let each other know that. So relationships are critical. Develop them, develop your network.
I'm going to agree with that. Recently, I was called about a board, and I noticed that they didn't have any Latinas on there. So I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll accept it, and I'll put in my application. But I also have some other. Do you have any other openings?" So I knew off the bat I can at least refer 20 women that I knew. In my head, I immediately, hey, ladies, I'm putting in your name. That's the kind of relationship I like to build. I like to get to know, because we have over 600 members at HWNT. I want to know what they do, because I'm always called, do you know an immigration lawyer? Immediately say, hey, Rossi, or Erica. So I like to get to know my membership and my friends and what they do, what are their experience. So immediately if somebody calls me, for a job, or I can write a letter of recommendation for whoever, as long as I get to know and build a relationship with you. So yes, the power of my sisterhood over here with HWNT, I have my personal board of directors that includes Miss Amanda over here that look out for me also. So a good board of directors, people that are out there, you're supporting you, is super important. And because I even have Miss Marianne, one of my 35 past state
You-
chairs.
So good network. Good
yes.
network. Perfect.
Yeah, I was
Betty?
going to say networking, but yeah, and lift each other up. Don't be afraid to, if you see an opportunity, and like we talked about, I'm going to say the word, don't be bitches. Help each other out because, you're not always going to be the best. So network, H100, hermanas, we're all here. Come to us, and we can support you any way we can.
My last thing is get your money straight, girl. Like, that's the biggest and best advice I can always give. And you can do it at any moment in time, but the younger that you do it, the more power you're going to have, the more influence that you can move forward with. I will say that I try to make sure and maintain that savings as much as possible, because you never want money to be the driver to stay in a bad situation. I've had some really bad directors, I'm going to say it, some racist directors also, that just eat my soul. And if I didn't have that financial plan in place, I wouldn't have been able to move forward and to have the freedom to think that. So that's why I always say, look at your financial plan. That's how we're going to change the wage gap. That's how we become, and even on a philanthropy level, looking at how you're utilizing your money to go to different things and to things that fuel your soul. So get your money straight.
Get your money straight. And on that note, I'm going to ask for a huge applause for our Latina powerhouses. Thank you very much.